You may remember my previous guest, Vickie Sampson, talking about a time when she had the reels or the tapes of Return of the Jedi's dialogue audio stolen from her car, and she said that's a story for a whole nother episode or a whole nother podcast. Well, I got in touch with Vickie and asked if she'd record this story, and here it is as a bonus episode. Enjoy.
I was hired to do all the ADR supervising of the actors who were in London for Return of the Jedi. I was very excited because a few years before, my mom was approached by George Lucas to do the sound work on Star Wars. And at the time we thought, oh, that's a stupid name for a movie. Like they're going to have some kind of war out in space. How dumb. And she told George, who was a friend of hers, she said, oh, George, I don't do sound effects for sci-fi movies and things like that. That's not my genre. But thanks anyway. So she turned down that job. Anyway, so I was hired to do the ADR supervising, which means I would have to fly to London and loop all the English actors for the film. So I was programming all the ADR, which means you figure out exactly what footage and time code, we call it now, what footage every line started at on a sheet of paper called a cue sheet. And the actors would use that to know what their lines were. And you record ADR lines, which stands for automated dialogue replacement. You record all of those in sequential order, basically one line at a time or whatever the actors can fit in their mouths perfectly. Back then, which was like 1981 or 2, there was no digital, so everything had to be done on film, on copies of the film called dupes or duplicates, which were black and white copies of the film in reels, which were 10 minutes each. Big, heavy reels, about 10 to 12 inches wide and heavy. They're heavy. They're probably a couple pounds each. And you had a separate picture and a separate track. So I had done all the programming up in San Francisco, where Lucasfilm was, before the ranch was built. And we were in a building off a main boulevard, and we had a secret name for the movie. I think it was Savage Harvest or Golden Harvest or something like that. I can't remember. And so I had all my film rolls in my car the night before I was leaving to go to London to do this. And I had never been on an overseas flight before, so I was kind of nervous, and I broke out in hives and all that stuff. Anyway, so I had the 20 reels in my car in 2 big boxes. I had all my cue sheets, I had my passport, I had all the documents I needed, and I had my 2 daughters in the car who were like 6 and 8 at the time, or 5 and 7. They were 5 and 7. And I thought, oh, I better stop at a sporting goods store and get some thermal underwear, because after all, I was going to London in January, and I don't know what I was thinking, like it was a third world country or something that I needed thermal underwear. But anyway, I stopped at a sporting goods store in Hollywood in my 67 Mustang, and I had a funny feeling like, oh, I shouldn't leave my car in this neighborhood kind of thing. But I said, oh, I'm only gone for a few minutes. So I went in the sporting goods store with my 2 daughters. I come out, and the window of my car was smashed and all the film was taken. And I was like freaking out. And my daughter, she put her little arms around me. She goes, it's okay, Mommy. At least they didn't hurt us. And I said, well, you don't understand. This is like Star Wars movie. Anyway, I had to call Lucas in the middle of the night in London. He was already there, and tell him what was going on. They sent detectives down from San Francisco to search through all the trash cans near the sporting goods store. Didn't find anything. The thieves also took my jackets and things that I had ready for the trip. However, they did not take my little canvas briefcase that had my cue sheets and my passport and all that stuff inside. and thank goodness. But they had to call in an assistant editor overnight to deconform a film version back to the version that I cued to. Now remember, we weren't on digital or computers or anything, so all the cues were hand typed to a certain footage for that particular version of the movie, because when you're working on a film, the versions change all the time. If they even make one frame change in a reel, everybody gets a new version. Everything has to be conformed to that. So the film was actually a couple versions ahead of where I cued it. So they had to come in overnight and conform the movie down 2 versions to match my sheets. So I arrived at the airport and got on the plane. I met the guy. The guy from San Francisco came with the 2 boxes of film, handed it to me, and went back up to San Francisco. Like, here you go. I get to London, and they whisk me off to Abbey Road Studios, where Johnny Williams was conducting the orchestra to put the score of the movie in, and George Lucas was sitting on the sidelines with a big airplane type noise cancellation headphones on, because he was sitting next to a speaker. And I kind of looked at him and went, I mouthed, "I'm sorry." And he shrugged his shoulders and was like, "Okay," and everything went really well. The sessions went well. And I got to ADR Sir Alec Guinness before he was a sir, and all the other English speaking actors, including the fellow who played the Emperor, Michael Impietro, I think his name is. And this young man walks into the studio. Now, the studio is interesting because it used to be a cow barn across from Hyde Park or Green Park. I can't remember which park it was now. But they would lead the cows from the park down this little alleyway and into the cow barn, which was like down below the street level a little bit. And they turned that years and years later into an ADR studio, because it was nice and quiet. It was underground, and it was very fun. Every day at like 4:00, they would stop for tea and Marmite on toast, which I came to love. And anyway, so Michael, this guy walks in. He's a young fellow. And I said, "Oh, hello, who are you?" And he's like, "Well, I'm the Emperor. I'm here to do the looping for the Emperor." And I went, "You're a young guy, And he's like, "It's all makeup, So I didn't even recognize him, which was pretty funny. The other fun part about that shoot was there was a shot of one of the stormtrooper, I don't know, guards or something, and it overlooked the big hangar of all the other, stormtroopers. And it was a big medium shot of him, and we had looped him. And I'm a big believer in breathing, which is the key to life. But, when you're shooting a film, sometimes when you take a big breath, you inhale, your shoulders move up, and, you want to replicate that, especially for ADR. Now, you may not hear an inhale from production tracks, but when you're doing ADR, if you don't have that inhale, then the line just kind of dangles out there in the air, and it looks like a loop line. So I carefully went through the takes that we did, looking for any place else that this guy had done an inhale, and I couldn't find any, because I would make notes on my cue sheets. So finally I said, could we just program for the breathing? Because back then we were on 24 track or 2-inch, and the beeps, the beep, beep, beep comes over the time when an actor would naturally inhale so that he would say the line at the imaginary 4th beep. So they would go beep, 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 talk. So over those beeps, the actor is going to inhale, and it doesn't go into record until the end of the 3rd beep. So I was missing an inhale. So I said, could we please program the inhale? And they all thought I was crazy. And I said, please, you'll thank me later. And so we programmed the beeps specifically for the inhale, and they humored me for that. Anyway, when we got back to the States and they were mixing the movie, I got a call from them on the dub stage, and they said, nobody can believe that line that guy says that you looped is a loop because of that inhale. That was brilliant. So That's when an inhale saves the day. But anyway, nowadays, they can open up the beeps. They can put the beeps in headphones so they don't get recorded on the stage. And, everything's a lot more efficient that way. But that was my Return of the Jedi story, except for one more thing. So when I looped Sir Alec Guinness, he had never done looping with beeps before. In the past, they had streamers that cued the actor to talk, and this was a new system for him. And I asked him if he would sign one of my cue sheets at the end of our session together. And he said, "Oh, no, my dear, you've done so much to help me learn this new fangled method of doing loops that I want your autograph." And so I gave him my autograph on a sheet, and he gave me his autograph on a sheet. So I thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, that's my Return of the Jedi story. Hope you enjoy. Tales from the Crypt.